Try not to sing, I'll keep it. Oh, baby,
Remember? So pretty much everybody who was alive at the time could remember where they were when they watched the moon landing on television. Do you remember Woodstock? Anybody there? People look, no. Well, I paid special attention because I had relatives who lived in the town of Woodstock, New York, and we went up there several times before all this happened. But at age 14, I was too young to go and really had no desire. I've never been one for festivals or crowds or that kind of thing. But I do remember watching it on television. You remember? What stands out for you as you watched it? Traffic jams, lines, music, an awful lot of mud, a lot of people. Well, the organizers of the festival were not ready. They weren't ready. The week before, it was discovered that the fence they had set up around the farm where the festival was to be held had several holes in it. While they were deciding whether to open it up for free or mend all the holes, because you had to buy a ticket, supposedly. Tickets were, guess how much? $6 for a weekend music festival. Well, while they were deciding whether or not to mend the fence and make people come through the gate with a ticket, people started arriving. When we lived in Dover, I noticed the NASCAR crowds a week or two before would start gathering and descending on the town, and I guess it was like that. People wanted to get an early start. So we never did mend the fences, and the whole celebration was free. They planned for about 50,000 people. Do you remember how many showed up?
400,000.
Almost 500,000. It was called, and think of it, this was before Facebook, Instagram, texting. How did people even find out about it? Word of mouth. And you remember telephones? Not cell phones, telephones. Well, it was a celebration of music, peace, and love as they built it, and money and tiredness. But there wasn't looting or fighting. There was a lot of loving, all kinds of loving. I read a story this week about a woman who was conceived there at Woodstock, as many were, I imagine. It was a turning point culturally and certainly in the world of classic rock music. The county that it was held in declared a state of emergency, as roads and even the New York State Thruway was closed. The organizers were not ready. The attendees were not ready. They ran out of clothes and toiletries, gas, and food. I just heard an interview this past week of one participant who noted he had to walk 1 hour through knee-deep mud and then wait online for 1 hour to buy hot dogs, and then 1 hour back in the knee-deep mud. People left their cars, double, triple, quadruple parked. They gave up on their muddy tents and just sort of slept wherever they were, leaning on each other. The culture wasn't ready. All of a sudden, there were hippies everywhere. Life happens, says Kung Fu Panda, while we are busy making other plans. Life happened that weekend 50 years ago and keeps happening. As I was sitting and writing this, I kept looking up to see the hummingbirds come to my hummingbird feeder in the backyard, because I didn't want to miss any of those magical times of God's creation. Emily Dickinson says, "Forever is made up of the moments of now." I don't want to miss what's happening here and now in the moment we have, because I'm worrying or fretting or complaining or thinking of tomorrow or thinking of yesterday. Luke starts with Jesus' words, "Do not be afraid." Do not be afraid. Are you kidding? There's so much to fear. Violence, terrorism, cancer, falling down, the economy, our children, poverty, homelessness, immigration, climate change, failing at what we try, the losses of aging, and death. Do not be afraid. Sounds nice, but come on, we live in the real world. And many of us live in fear without even realizing it. Do not be afraid, says Jesus, because it is God's pleasure to give you the kingdom. It is God's pleasure. It is who God is, to share light and love and abundance. Blessed are those who are ready. Ready and awake to see it. Right now, if you go outside and look up, the stars are there in the heavens. Can you see them? No. We see them dimly at dusk, brighter during the night, and even brighter if we go out to a place with that big sky like Montana. The stars are there, even if we're not in a position or the right light to see them. God's kingdom, God's rule and mercy and unconditional love is here, but so often blocked out by our fear or our busyness or our anxiety or all of the noise that keeps coming at us. Do not be afraid, says Jesus. It is God's pleasure to give you the kingdom. Jesus says, so stay awake, be alert, be ready. Well, for some of us, this causes more anxiety than not. I mean, what do you do when company is coming? Just sit around and enjoy? No. I have to clean, I have to cook, I have to make sure I have enough. I have to decide what games might we play or what do I need to show them. Be ready. So this passage, difficult as it is one of dichotomy and paradox. Be ready for the kingdom that's here. It's hiding, it's being revealed, but we don't really know when or where or how, okay? We don't want to be on alert at every moment. We don't want adrenaline pumping through our system night and day, 7 days a week. So we stop a minute, take a breath, and look to Jesus. It doesn't seem that Jesus was anxious or worried. It seems, as we read the Gospels, that Jesus walked from one place to another, awake and ready and noticing, sensing when there was need around him and reaching out to heal or to speak or to touch. And Jesus left the chaos when he needed a moment of silence or solitude with God. Maybe I'm wrong, but my sense is that Jesus was unhurried. Jesus knew the presence of God and God's Spirit within him and walked with that. It's not so much us seeking God, tracking God down with a butterfly net, as it is agreeing to be found. That's Anne Lamott. It's not so much us seeking God, tracking God down with a butterfly net, as it is agreeing to be found. My oldest son, Matthew, is driving on his way to Boulder, Colorado today. He left Friday for a 3-day journey. By the way, who knew that Iowa was between Indiana and Nebraska? Not me. While Matthew was here visiting and recounting his 6-month world trip, he reminded me of something about this journey that we're all on in life. While he was in Europe and Asia and New Zealand, he planned in a general way. He had to find a place to stay, he had to find his next flight. But he was always ready to be interrupted, to discover something new. When he got to Japan, he met some friends from California. He spent a week with them, and then they were traveling out of Tokyo by train to a smaller city, and so he just decided to go with them. It ended up being a beautiful place and one of his favorite as he walked along the river with the cherry blossoms in bloom. That was an interruption of his plan. From the Philippines, he planned to come back to the United States, but met some people who urged him to spend time in New Zealand, one of the most beautiful places on earth, they said. Matthew looked at the map. Sure, it's on the way, kind of. So he got to New Zealand with no plans and asked around and listened to other people who were traveling and discovered that a bus tour of both of the islands was the best way to go. Well, the first day on the bus, he met someone and fell in love. Major interruption of his plans. So he stayed there 2 months. How do we know what the knock on the door is going to be? How do we know what the next moment will bring and whether or not it's the interruption we need right then and there? We don't. But we open the door. And perhaps we find a way to be willing to wait through the darkness until we see the stars. Perhaps we find a way to agree to be found by God, who is always ready to love and to bring healing and peace. Let us pray. Oh God, our minds swirl with the paradox, with the disruption, with the noise, with trying to understand your ways in our lives and in our world. Help us to stop, to take a breath, to wait in those times of uncertainty until we sense your kingdom within us and around us. Amen.